Welcome. We're here to talk today about a set of usability tests that we did back at the University of Minnesota back in May. This was the first sort of formal usability testing we have done with Drupal 7. We had done another set of formal usability testing, a couple of them actually, with Drupal 6 back in 2008 and 2009. But what we wanted to do is also test Drupal 7 because we did a bunch of work in Drupal 7 to try and address some of the issues we found back there. So we'll talk a little bit about that here. So with me is, I'm Angie Byron, or webchick on Drupal.org. I'm here with Brad Bowman, or Beer ADB, Jen Lampton, or Jen Lampton, and Boyan Summers, or Boyan. Okay. All right. So this was the team who came down for doing the usability testing. We had representation from the University of Minnesota. We also had Boyan Summers, who is one of Drupal, the Drupal project's UX leads. Dharmesh is another usability specialist who works at Acquia. Jen Lampton does a whole bunch of training with Chapter 3, and so she's very cognizant of the kind of things that new users bash their face against. I also came in my capacity as a Drupal 7 core maintainer because it was very interesting to hear like what all our work did. Brad is also a member of the usability team. David Rothstein is a core developer who did a bunch of work on the D7 UX stuff, and then Erica Stenrick, a creative lead, so a designer. We all sort of got together to try and bring our observations to the table. So what have we been up to? What were we up to in that week? This is us goofing around a table. The lab facility is kind of interesting. It's like you sit in a room, like a small room, and then there's one-way glass, and you can see what participants are doing, and you have like a feed of what their eyeballs are looking at, and also like what they're saying on the microphone. And it was interesting to like hear them get progressively more and more frustrated. But we'll talk about that later. So why usability? Why do we care about usability? We basically care about usability because that's sort of what makes Drupal fun to interact with. That's what brings new people to the project and that sort of thing. And so the way that the testing was done is the person was in the room alone, and they were asked to think out loud as they were doing things. So in other words, like they'd say, okay, I'm supposed to change the color of this thing, so I think I'm going to go under appearance, and oh, there it is right there, or I'm supposed to create a piece of content. Maybe you go under help, or whatever, that kind of thing, and just talk through their process and where they're getting stuck and stuff like that. Why do we care about usability? Has anyone seen this graphic before? Okay, so Drupal kind of has this reputation of being a little bit hard to learn. And so these are the learning curves for popular CMSs, and you can see, WordPress kind of does that, and Joomla does this, and ModX does this, and then Drupal kind of goes up and it becomes this cliff that people hang themselves from, and a bulldozer shoveling bodies off. Yeah, so we're trying to avoid like this perception. We're trying to make Drupal so that people who aren't as embedded in the project as we all are can enjoy it as well. So the goals of the testing were to validate the solutions to the Drupal 6 problems that we came up with. We also wanted to start really early because Drupal 8 had just opened up in a couple months prior, and this would give us like a great starting point to know what issues we needed to fix. I think I told. So we tested 8 participants, and something that's interesting about these participants is everybody but one of them had no previous experience with Drupal, but they had used other CMSs or Dreamweaver or that kind of thing. So these were web developers. These weren't like random people off the street. These were people directly in our target audience. So these are people who build websites, and then we wanted them to try Drupal and see what they found. And so for the most part, we looked at the site builder persona. We weren't testing like the DX of Drupal or some of the developer features, but yeah. So it was a pretty awesome group of people. We asked them to do a number of tasks, and basically we gave them this mock-up image, and we said, go ahead and create the About Us page of this site that you have here. Change the background color. Create a little block on the sidebar, that sort of thing. When you write up these tasks, you can't actually use any terminology that would clue them in. So you have to basically point and say, okay, can you put this sponsor thing right here on the page? And then they would have to look at the interface and sort of figure out from there, how they wanted to do that. And I'll hand it off to Brad here to talk a little bit about some of the past usability studies that we've done, and sort of the work we did in Drupal 7 to combat that.
Yeah, so as Angie said, in the past we've done usability studies. We did it at the University of Minnesota back in 2008 and also the University of Baltimore in 2009. So some of the things that we were dealing with in this test were things that were problems that we found before. So I'm just going to quickly cover some of the things that we found before, so you kind of have some perspective on what we were coming into for this round of testing. One of the things that we found in previous rounds of testing is on the create content screen, the default content types in Drupal 6 didn't really make sense to people. A lot of people were thinking of with page, they were thinking of, not just the content on the page, but everything that surrounds that as well. And then with story, I think a lot of people didn't really know what to make of that. They either just didn't know usually, or some people would say it was like a multi-page piece of content, so they expected it, almost like the book module or something like that, where you could click through multiple pages of something you were creating. If they did actually choose which content type they wanted, they were presented with this screen, which has a couple issues. The first is the menu settings is really prominent. In most cases when you create content, you don't actually want to put it in a menu item. So people, they'd click into that and, sort of be overwhelmed when they were trying to create content. The other is the split summary cursor right up there, which has pretty cool functionality, but it's not something that we really want to expose to most users. Does anybody know how that works in Drupal 6? You basically click the button and the form or the field cuts in half, and the idea is that the top is supposed to be the teaser for the content and the bottom is supposed to be the main content. But people would click that and they'd just see the body field get cut in half, and they'd have no idea what they were supposed to do with that. So a lot of people thought it was really cool and would sit there and click back and forth for a few minutes, but very few people actually understood what it was supposed to be. Another issue is the collapsible field sets. There were kind of two different things that you saw there. The first is that people saw that they were links and they were editing content and they didn't want to lose the context of inputting things into content, so they wouldn't click it. The other is that people got how it worked but thought it was really important, so they'd go through and click every single collapsible field set and look at what's inside of it. And there are things like authoring information and revision options and things like that that the majority of people just don't care about. Going back to the menu, so it's really prominent on the edit page, and then you click into it to create a menu item, and this is what you get. If you look at this this form field, that has all of Drupal's menu options in it, including everything under the administrative section. So, a user would go to put something in a menu and they'd have this drop down with hundreds of options, including, things in the administration section. So, who really wants to create a node and put it under the administrative section? There may be a use case for it somewhere, but it's not something I think that we want to expose to the majority of people. Another one, this is the screen that you get after you install Drupal. It's basically a big wall of text, and in general, people don't really read giant walls of text. So that's one problem. But even if they did read this giant wall of text, we give them links to different sections of the site, like create content or the administrative section and things like that. And we teach them that this is how you get around Drupal. This is how you do tasks in Drupal. And then as soon as you create a piece of content and promote it to the front page, this screen gets taken away for good. So people install Drupal, they learn to get around using this page, and then as soon as they put anything there, it's wiped out, and they have to relearn how to do the things that they've just learned how to do. This is the screenshot of the administrative section. It's really overwhelming. There are tons of options here. A lot of them, the majority of users, don't want to know about or don't care about. Things like actions being above the fold, or post settings, RSS publishing. This is something that the majority of people don't really care about, and we're giving everyone this information with the same prominence, so it just becomes overwhelming for a lot of people. Also, I mean, if you compare these two slides, the actual layout is pretty similar, and in both cases, it's just a giant wall of text. So we're really making people pay a lot more attention than they should have to, I think. Another problem is what we call the node orphanage after testing in Drupal 6. It's basically if you create a node in Drupal 6 and you don't put it in a menu, there's no way to get back to that content. Well, there's only one way. It's through the administrative section here, clicking that content link, and you'll get a list of content from there. But otherwise, you know, you're just on this random page, there's no menu item. A lot of people would create content and then immediately think that that content was lost or have no idea how to get back to it. And I believe Angie's going to talk about fixes for Drupal 7.
Hi, I'm back. Yes. So this is a bit about like what we try to do to combat these problems in Drupal 7. So when you install Drupal 7, it looks like this, and this is basically, so some of the things that we did. For instance, we took that administrative page that was sort of all over the place on the admin link, and we put it all at the top and sort of split it out. We also reorganized the information architecture so it's more task-based. So when people are, doing something with content, we put all that stuff under one area. When they're doing something with configuring their site, we put that all under a separate area. So you're not looking at the, content and then switching between, in this list of 5 things, content is the one that actually lets me manage content. But post settings and RSS publishing are things I'm going to set once, if ever, and never look at again. And then we have the contextual links. This is to allow us to, if I'm looking at a block in Drupal 6, the way to configure that block is to go back, go to admin, site building blocks, find the block in the list, click the configure link, twiddle something, and then click save. And then by the time I've done that, I have no idea what I was doing when I happened to see that thing on the block that needed fixing. So contextual links was an attempt to fix that. So now you look at the thing, you click here, click configure block, and you get right in there. We also added this shortcut bar in an attempt to appease sort of like power users who, memorize URLs and just type them in or that kind of a thing. And basically, because there are sometimes more clicks to get to pages that you got to before by, just going to the admin page and going right there. This was an ability to sort of like take the most frequently accessed pages and stick them in an easy bookmark thing. And that's configurable by user or role. We also made a number of changes to the create content page. So the first thing over there is we renamed page and story to article and basic page. Because nobody knew what a story was. And again, that page they thought was the entire page from the top left or the bottom right of the browser window. We also added the 7 theme. So you notice that these two things look different from each other because of both the overlay and the 7 theme. And that's an attempt to create stark visual contrast between you're looking at your site or you're doing something to maintain your site. We also made the story content type very different, the article content type very different from page. Because in Drupal 6, page and story are both just title and body, and that's it. There is no difference to them whatsoever, visually at least while you're creating it. When you get done creating it, there's a subtle difference, which is one shows up on the front page and shows author information, the other one doesn't. So we decided, let's make it very different. So we added a tags vocabulary. You can see we also added image uploading there. So it's very clear, like this is for article kind of things. This other one is for pages. We got rid of the teaser splitter, made that just a little subtle link on the body field that you click if you need it. And we replaced all of that, huge chunk of collapsed field sets that was sort of mystery meat. You didn't know what you were getting until you kind of popped in there, with the vertical tabs pattern. And that allows people to see not only what the settings are that are available, but also what they're set to, so they don't actually have to click into something unless they need to see it. So let's talk about the positives with that, because we did a lot of work in Drupal 7. It took a long time. So let's find out if it actually worked or not. So some of the stuff did. For example, when we asked people to add content, they were able to get right there. They found it, and it's funny actually, this circles like all of the places in a default installation that you can get to the add content screen. So apparently we wanted people to be able to get there. But they did struggle with that in Drupal 6 a lot. So these are some of the comments that people said. You know, it's pretty simple, straightforward when they were asked how it was to do that task. So, you know, that worked out pretty well. The one exception, though, is if some people come at this kind of like, and you know, people use Dreamweaver especially, come at these tasks of like create an About Us page with like, oh, I'll create the menu item first. Because they're thinking in terms of like, I want to create my site structure. When they did that, they didn't fare as well, because I don't know if you've ever tried to do that, but it asks for things like a path, and if you try and just enter something in, it says that path doesn't exist yet, and it's kind of messy. But anyway, but if they found the add content page first, they did really well with this task. Everybody got this distinction. So they understood that when they wanted to create an About Us page, they'd create a basic page. They would not create an article. They wouldn't deliberate between the two of those, so that change seemed to be really well. They loved the color module. These are some of the designs that they made. Aren't they all beautiful? I especially like that like GeoCities special one over there. That's pretty cool. So, you know, they said that finding their way to appearance was really easy. In contrast to finding themes, because themes in Drupal 6 were under site building, right? Along with modules and like 1,500 other things. So they found it really easy to find out how to do this. And so this was some of the comments they said. There was like, oh, that's cool. You know, people really like the color module. But something that's interesting is what color module does in Drupal 7 particularly is it has this sort of interactive preview thing here. So as you change things up in the interface, then it changes it down here as well. People love that. But then the problem was that it set their expectations. They expected to find that everywhere else. So they expected that when they, for example, create a piece of content, hit preview, they wanted to see it like that. They wanted to see what does that look like in the context of my entire site. They wanted to see what a block would look like before they turned it on in the context of their larger site. So preview was a big thing. Overlay and toolbar, despite many angry comments in the issue queue, seem to have tested really well. People found the toolbar right away. They thought it was very well organized. They were able to find what they needed. And then most people got that you know, you could stay in the admin context and then close out of it when you were done. But there was one person who kind of got fixated on that and thought you had to click on a link, click the overlay, close, click on another link, click the overlay, close. So, you know, if they had had a little bit longer to work on that, that might have helped. But in general, it did what it was intended to do, which was make it clear when people were in an admin context and when they weren't. Some of the first impressions people said was Drupal's really simple. It's clearly laid out. There's a lot you can do, not very cluttered. What we did is in the first minute or so of the test, we just asked them to just explore. You know, take 5 minutes, or well, 5 minutes. It was like 2 minutes. Just click around, and we watched what they did, and they sort of go through the menu items and stuff. And then we'd ask them, what do you think? And so they were all pretty positive about it, at least at first. Because then the trouble started. No, I'm just kidding. I'll hand it off to Jen, and she'll tell you a little bit about the things that weren't tested so well.
All right, so there were a lot of little problems, but I'm just going to kind of recap on the biggest ones that we ran into. The first one is Drupal terminology. This is not a new problem. There's something we've known about for a long time, is there are a lot of words in Drupal that mean things to us as people who are familiar with Drupal, and maybe mean something else to people outside the Drupal community. Sometimes people come into Drupal with preconceived understandings of what these words may mean, and sometimes the words had absolutely no meaning to them at all. So a couple examples are things like dashboard. Everybody expected the dashboard to contain an administrative place where they could do everything on their site. Things like structure meant different things to different people. Everybody's used that word before, but not in the context of building a Drupal site. And then words like module were really confusing to everyone. Some people thought, maybe with experience with other content management systems, that that was something like a block, and a whole bunch of people had no idea whatsoever. So when people were struggling with it, we went in and asked them, like, what do you think a module is? And these are some of the answers we got. Something that goes on the homepage that you click on, so maybe a button. And then, I don't know, which is great. And then some people just, I have no idea what that is. So expecting people to click on a link to find something specific when they don't even know the word in the link was also kind of problematic. Theme and region names. So this is the kind of thing that once you understand how a theme works, you understand that there's different ways you can configure blocks within a theme. You understand that the different parts of themes have different names. For somebody who doesn't understand how the system works at first, they don't know what a default theme is, let alone the name Bartik. So trying to get someone to get that was really painful. So we have a little video here for you.
Let's see, I'm pretty sure Bartik in 7. I think I was on Bartik. Okay. Sidebar, oh my god. Header, help, highlighted. Okay, I don't want it to be featured because I'm pretty sure that's like the welcome block. So, oh, chips, yeah? What does that mean? Footer. Okay, I don't want it to be footer. I'm pretty sure it's sidebar, the first thing on the sidebar. So, my goodness. Which one am I on? 7 or Bartik? Sidebar? Oh my gosh. Okay, well I'll try this one. I wish you could preview what I'm doing. There should be a little preview button.
It's a pretty good example of what we were feeling during the test. And then the next biggest thing we realized is that when we asked people to create this little area of sponsor content, every single person, now that we gave them 5 ways to add content, of course just went to create content. So people didn't differentiate between block content and page content as being something distinctly different. So blocks in Drupal are always an administrative thing, right? You go under admin, site building, you build a block, you put it where it goes. But every single person thought of that as content, which is something we hadn't thought of before.
Okay, so one of the kind of more overarching problems that we saw is that users kind of expected visual feedback of their changes. As they're going through the different site building tools, they're kind of getting used to that with I don't know, demonstrate blocks or something like that you can actually see some of the things that you're doing, and they're kind of focused on the end result, what it will look like in the front end side. And Drupal as a whole doesn't really accommodate well for this model. An example of this is kind of in the block sections, as the previous participant in the video kind of they asked for a preview button. And when people see kind of the administrative interface, they do not really see how the options that are shown there relate to the front-end website. And we kind of have some tools to bridge this gap. For example, with blocks, we have the demonstrate blocks page where you kind of see where stuff goes. But for other parts in Drupal, for example, the menus, we don't really have this model. You can't really view where a menu goes. And when people got to, for example, this page and they saw the options listed there, they were confused where these menus would go. And quite often we had people that thought, we asked them to put something in the tabs on top, basically pointed, that's where we want this link to the about page to go. And they saw these options and they were like, I don't know where to go. And they often tried navigation, which doesn't actually help. You have to pick main menu. So there were some confusion about the terminology as well there. So something like a demonstrate menu page here would really help. So the demonstrate blocks page, when they actually got to this page, they were like, I want to add like a block here. They were clicking on the yellow part, saying like, that's where I want my block to go. And this is kind of in line in the model that people kind of want to perform actions on the front end, or at least on their actual website, rather than being a part of some administrative context. Content preview. This was a whole other issue. When people created content and they click the preview button, it actually shows up in the overlay. So the thing that they're creating opens up in the administrative context, and it kind of confused people. They were like, they often actually missed it even. They didn't see where did my preview go. And other than that, the actual preview, there's a trimmed version and a full version. That wasn't clear either. So yeah, there's a whole lot we can do to improve that. modules. So one of the later tasks that we did is to extend Drupal. This is really something that we introduced in Drupal 7. We introduced the ability to kind of like update it with FTP and just upload it. And we thought we were testing this screen. That was really our expectation. But it turned out it wasn't really what we were testing. We're kind of testing whether people understood that you could extend Drupal, and both extend it with config modules, but also enable existing modules in core. And this whole process is a bit awkward. When people come to the module page, they're immediately overwhelmed, and they don't really notice some of the important links there, important information there, and turn to kind of scrolling down the list, trying to figure out what it's about. And this kind of makes Drupal come off as limited. The biggest strength of Drupal is obviously its content space, like the ability to extend it, and we don't really inform them that well about this strength. So let me show a quick video of a user trying to do this, trying to understand what it's about.
Not sure, actually.
Okay. What do you think you would see if you were to click on it?
Well, actually, I would think it'd probably be like the website outline, but I mean, I saw that on a different page, but that's what I think of when you think of modules, like the different styles of the website, so.
Okay. Well, let's click on modules and see what's there and see if how it compares to what you were expecting.
Let's see. Oh, okay, so download addition contributed module to extend Drupal's functionality.
Is this what you thought you'd see?
No. Yeah, I don't know. Which, like, how would I find a web form? Maybe I'd have to, like, read through my routing, but, like, maybe I'd have to read through all these and try to see which one is the one kind of that I'm looking for.
Read them all through?
Yeah. Like, read all these descriptions.
Okay.
Like, I would hope that it'd be, like, something on here under name, but it's not.
Yeah, so we asked people to basically install webform, and well, she obviously didn't notice the add new module link, and that seems pretty much a pattern on really busy pages that, for example, the action links kind of get missed. But when they did get to Drupal.org to kind of find that particular module, they were confronted with this, and this listing just doesn't help. It's really difficult, and they often just miss the ability to do a lot of good searching. So to show another video, kind of to show the importance of that they're missing that.
Well, I was on the right page, and I knew it.
Let me try that in a different way.
Well, I was on the right page, and I knew it. Registration. Oh my goodness. Registration form. No. Create one. You know what? I'm on here. I feel like I need to create one. I'll create one. Okay, module developer. Goodness. Just want a simple button. Add a web form? Okay, maybe. Oh, well, I was on the right page, and I knew it. Registration. Oh my goodness. Oh. Registration form. No. Create one. You know what? I'm on here. I feel like I need to create one.
There we go. Okay, so one of the things that you saw is she didn't actually notice the search field. And web form is one of the few that is actually in that actual page. It's like, I don't know, number 5 or 6, something like that. So she could have just scrolled down and see it, but she was kind of like hypnotized by the form to ability to search for it, or at least filter down. But then she missed the most important field on that, which is obviously the search text area. So that's one of the things that we can optimize on Drupal.org. Work on that and improve that field to kind of bring that forward more. And when people got to this page, we saw one interesting thing. Is that like on top you have the Git instructions, which looks an awful lot like get instructions. So yeah, people went there and got like, oh yeah, that's gonna help me. And when they get to that page, they see this, and they go like, well, okay, this is not good. It's not where I'm supposed to be. So yeah, we had to relabel that, and it's actually in Drupal.org already. But again, there's more problems when they're trying to install a module. When they get to this page, or at least this part of the page, they're unsure what version they need. They often kind of resort to just choosing the top one, which in many cases help, but in some cases when they had the wrong module, they were installing a Drupal 6 version. And it's only when they got to the part in the installer where it gives feedback where you have the right version, is when they understood that they were downloading the wrong one. So there's definitely something we can do to kind of improve that relation between browsing for modules and getting the right one. Additionally, the download options, the tar.gz and zip, they just picked one. It didn't really make sense, the differentiation there, and some people were like, I don't know if I can get the tar.gz to kind of work on this BZ. So yeah, there were some problems there, and a lot of this part of the screen was kind of picked randomly. So there's room for improvement there. And yeah, Jen will continue.
All right, so in summary, there was a lot of Drupal-specific terminology that really seemed to trip people up when we asked them to perform some basic tasks. And people really liked the few places we did have a visual representation of what was actually going to happen, but then they expected that everywhere else. So everywhere we had a visual representation that wasn't accurate, or no visual representation whatsoever, people seemed to get really confused or frustrated and not know how to proceed. A differentiation between blocks and content was also something people had a really hard time with, and downloading and installing modules was near impossible. The way our setup was configured at the lab is that every person was allowed to call the help desk. They had a phone on their desk that called into us, and so we had one person who was designated as a help desk, and every single person who went through this usability study had to call the help desk. There was nobody who was able to complete all of the tasks without help. And in the end, when we asked people what they thought about if they would use Drupal again, one girl actually said, well, is the help desk always available? Because we were so great that, she wanted it all the time. We had, after the whole thing was over, we had a period where we got to go in and ask people what they thought about Drupal after they'd actually had a chance to use it. So in the beginning, we let them poke around without actually trying to perform any tasks, and they thought that it was really great, easy to figure stuff out. When we came back at the end and said, okay, well, now what do you think? Their perspective had changed a little bit. They said that it was really hard. People struggled with it. One person thought she would need to ask somebody who was a little bit more technical to get her to help her through it. Yeah, if you know what you're doing, it'll be fast and you can get right through it. If you don't know what you're doing, it's a little shaky and confusing at first, but once you get familiar with it, it would be fine. So that, and then of course, not as user-friendly as I thought after you try to actually accomplish some tasks. The good thing is that everybody, even though they thought that it was hard to perform some of the tasks, they could see that Drupal was really customizable. That was the #1 word that they had all chosen to describe Drupal, but they also were allowed to choose out of a bunch of different words to describe their experience. They also choose words like confusing and time-consuming and too technical, frustrating and overwhelming. So even though they could see that there's a lot of really good things about Drupal, they did also have some less than favorable words to use for it. So this is a representation of, we let them choose how easy is Drupal and how valuable is Drupal. So everybody said, you know, it was probably a little bit harder on the usage side than expected, but they also saw that it was also going to be extremely valuable. So goods and bads there.
Yeah, so what's next? Well, first, I mean, just fix everything we found, right? No problem. No, but seriously, obviously, you know, working on the issues that we found, you know, we need to do additional testing. You know, a lot of the things that we did in this round of testing showed that, you know, changes that we made in the past were helpful. And other things, I mean, there were other areas where changes that we'd made in the past were not effective. So as we continue to make changes, just continuing to test and make sure we're on the right path is important. Another thing is obviously attracting more designers and UX people to the project and having them help us. I think everybody would say that we don't have enough designers and UX people in Drupal right now. So finding a way to get them interested in helping is a big deal. And if you want to help, there's a handful of ways that you can do it. Everything that we found or validated should be tagged in the issue queues with the UNM or UMN 2011 tag. So if you're interested in looking at the statuses of any of those issues, you can filter on the issue queue by that. There's a usability group on groups.drupal.org. I recommend signing up and following what's happening there. There's also a Drupal community initiative page for usability, which is basically, I believe Bowman actually administers that, and it has information on what the UX team's priorities are and what's going on in that area. And also there's a user experience sprint on Friday, so we'll be doing some work on some of these issues there as well. And thank you to some of the sponsors for this, the University of Minnesota for giving us lab space, Drupal Camp, Twin Cities for helping us out with some airfare and stuff like that, and Crimson and Aqua as well for donating, as well as a ton of individual sponsors. So, all right, I guess we have, what do we have, 15 minutes? Yeah, so we have a few minutes for questions. If anybody has them? Oh, 5 minutes.
Hi, I realize this session is mainly about Drupal going forward, but based on your usability studies of Drupal 6 or 7, do you have any recommendations for modifications for the Drupal sites we're doing now? Stuff we should be aware of? Modify modules? Yeah. What can we do now for Drupal 7 to improve it based on what you know?
Well, in Drupal 6, you know, you install things like the admin menu, and that will get you a toolbar at the top. You install some kind of administration theme that will get you front-end, back-end separation, things like that. There's a, I don't know the name of this module, but there's a module that on the, like, say, the menu settings page will let you actually create a piece of content. What's that?
I shouldn't have said Drupal 6, just like for 7.
For 7, yeah. Cool. So in 7, I mean, a lot of what we found was about brand new users who would not be, brand new site building users, who would not necessarily be your customers. So your customer's probably never going to have to find the modules page themselves and things like that. The actual content editing stuff, that actually did test pretty well. I mean, we didn't hit a lot of issues with that kind of stuff. But for some of the people who, the biggest like content editing issue we found is like blocks, and also with when they went to the menu first and then try to create a piece of content. So there is a module that sticks a node add form at the bottom of that menu page, which is awesome, but I can't remember the name of it, but someone will probably tweet it or something. And then for the block stuff, a lot of people use things like panels or display suite so that your entire page is just bits of content around the page. That's definitely the mental model that people have coming into Drupal. It's core makes you kind of differentiate between whether something's a node or a block or a view or a block with a view in it, or like that kind of thing. But the way people definitely expect the web to work is just little bits of content. I didn't know that was overly helpful. We didn't get a chance to test a range of things. Oh, there's one other thing, which is there's this Google Summer of Code project that integrates a web browser, like a browser functionality into Drupal. So when you go into the modules page, instead of having to do that janky thing where you like copy and paste the URL into the text field, it actually pops up kind of along the lines of WordPress. It pops up like a big form where you can search for modules, and you can see a view of modules and some statistics about them and stuff like that. That's something I'd love to see an initiative to get something like that into Drupal 8. Because that would be really powerful. But so there are people in Contrib actively working on some of this stuff. And the usability team is working on some of it as well. But a lot of the bigger issues are more targeted towards site builders than content editors. It's tricky to usability test content editing experience because in many cases people will customize that interface for whatever task their clients are trying to do. So it's hard to test that aspect. If it's a lot easier to test, are we getting the people who will actually build Drupal sites to figure out Drupal? So don't know.
So there's also the terminology problem. There's a module called string overrides that'll let you find anything funny like taxonomy and change it to category. So there are some things that you can do to help with other problems.
My question is about graphics and iconography in core in general. I don't know whether it seems to me like there is or was a concerted effort not to use iconography in Drupal core. That I think that came out specifically with getting 7 into core. I feel like the theme that 7 was kind of based off of a little bit had a lot of different icons at the top. Am I right or wrong about that as far as that being a kind of a policy or an unwritten rule? And if either way, is that something that we would consider changing?
Well, one of the decisions we made with the Drupal 7 was obviously in terms of resources, in terms of icons. I mean, we had to make a lot of icons. But additionally to that, I mean, yeah, it was initially in the proposal for the shortcut bar to have icons next to the menu items, and we decided against that because we feel it's probably unlikely for module developers to create icons for their modules, and therefore kind of expecting them to do that out of the box would be kind of I don't know, asking for something they don't like doing. And in addition to that, what tends to happen with more modular systems, that whenever you do something like making it more using more icons, is that they get a lot of dummy icons. If you look at other systems that try to do this, you see a lot of dummy icons, and I mean that's not really helping. So you really need to kind of have that community from the start. Like Apple has that community from the start that people are into making good icons, but we don't really have that. So that's why we decided against it.
Can I just add to that as well? On the iconography front, I actually contributed to the Drupal 7 theme. One of the biggest reasons that we were against putting a lot of iconography in is that icons are only really useful if the icon can work in isolation from the word that it represents. Most of the stuff that's going on in Drupal, we have enough trouble describing in words, let alone trying to get it into an icon. So if you start trying to create icons for all of this stuff, actually what you're doing is just creating more visual clutter, more cognitive overload. And even though, again, what I say about Drupal 7 is that I think we did a really great job of creating the impression of a better user experience, and in some places creating a definitively better user experience. And I think the testing kind of proved that, where people at the end were saying it wasn't quite as user friendly as I expected it to be. So I think that's the first of many steps along the road. And I think that iconography can sometimes do exactly the same thing. You look at it and you go, oh, this is going to be easy because there's pictures instead of hard words everywhere. And then you start using it and you go, but I don't know what any of these pictures mean. This is actually a problem. So that's the trick with icons and when to use them.
Yeah, so I think we're a couple minutes over time, so we should probably wrap it up. But thank you for coming.